Why is a small and isolated island on the other side of the world so vital to everything from the phone you carry in your pocket to the brain of the car you drive and even the appliances in your home? Why do the world's most important military and financial analysts, from the Pentagon to Wall Street, say that a major crisis in Taiwan would not just be a local war, but could shake the entire global economy to its foundations? Most people think that the real power in the world lies in oil wells or gold reserves. However, in the 21st century, things have completely changed. Today, the modern world stands much more on a technological backbone that is too small and complex to be seen with the naked eye than on oil pipelines. And the very heart of this backbone beats on this small island in the middle of the great ocean. Today, we are diving into the story of why not just an island, but all of us are lethally dependent on that island, into the dark side of the global chip wars. When you turn on the news, you usually hear the name of Taiwan accompanied by fighter jet flights, Navy ship patrols, and very harsh diplomatic statements. The People's Republic of China sees Taiwan as an inseparable part of its own territory, as a breakaway province, and says it will reunite the island with the mainland by force if necessary. Taiwan, on the other hand, defines itself as an independent and democratic country. This sovereignty dispute has kept military pressure alive in the region for decades. However, there is a very large detail here that should not be overlooked. The massive interest of America, Europe, and other world states in this island is not based only on political and moral reasons like defending democracy. It is not just an ideological struggle between communism and democracy. The real issue is that the island controls something much larger than its own borders. We come to the real heart of this video, to semiconductors, also known as chips. What is a semiconductor? In its simplest form, semiconductors are very small, microscopic electronic brains that direct electricity and process data. Today, everything you look at and think has a mind inside is dependent on chips. Smartphones in your pocket, computers on your desk, autonomous driving systems of electric cars, massive data centers that keep the internet alive, and the artificial intelligence algorithms which are the biggest revolution of our day. Not just civilian life, fighter jets in the sky, guidance systems of missiles, and medical imaging devices. In short, the modern economy and human civilization have become as dependent on chips today as they are on electricity and water. If there are no chips, there is no modern world. It is that simple. If chips are so important, then why does everyone not produce their own chips? Why are we so dependent on Taiwan? This is where we encounter the invisible king of world technology, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Briefly and famously known as TSMC, most people think that giant American or South Korean companies produce their own chips. This is a big misconception. Those giant technology companies in the world only do the architectural design of the chips. They almost draw the plan of the chip. However, physically producing that chip is a completely different technology. TSMC has absolute dominance in the production of the world's most advanced, thinnest, and most complex chips. More than 90% of the world's most advanced chips come only from the factories of this company. The brains of all those famous phone brands, computer processors, and artificial intelligence giants are printed in the factories on this island. They design, Taiwan produces. Let's look at how this production monopoly deeply affects the daily life of an ordinary person. Taiwan does not just produce high-end artificial intelligence chips. The products coming off the belts of those massive factories in Taiwan are in every corner of your life. The locking of your car door, the programming of your washing machine at home, the operation of the MRI device you enter in the hospital, the movement of the arms of industrial robots in factories, and even the signals of the modem that distributes the internet in your home. All of these work thanks to those tiny pieces of silicon originating from Taiwan. On the map, the Taiwan issue may seem like an isolated diplomatic crisis thousands of miles away from us. But a 1-hour pause in that island's factories could cause a car factory in your city to lay off workers. The impact is incredibly close. We learned in a very painful way in the near past that this is not just a theoretical disaster scenario. Remember the global pandemic period between 2020 and 2022? What happened when factories closed and supply chains were clogged for just a few months? The world's largest automotive brands lost billions of dollars and had to stop their factories. Why? Because they could not find a simple chip worth a few dollars to install inside thousands of cars that had completed production. New car deliveries were delayed by up to a year, and the prices of electronic goods instantly skyrocketed. Everything from PlayStations to graphics cards fell onto the black market. Just a small disruption in the supply chain brought the global automotive and electronics sectors to their knees. This event was a frightening trailer connecting theory to reality. You will rightfully ask the following question. Why don't America, Europe, or China suddenly spend billions of dollars and establish massive chip factories in their own countries? Why can't they immediately fill the place of Taiwan? Because producing an advanced chip does not consist of just opening a factory building and putting machines inside. Chip production is one of the most sensitive, error-free, and engineering-wise difficult processes human history has ever reached. In laboratories where even a tiny grain of dust throws the entire production into the trash, operations are carried out at the nanometer scale. It takes years to establish a chip factory and requires a massive investment of tens of billions of dollars. It is not solved only with money either. The engineering talent, educated workforce, and that perfect supply network that Taiwan has accumulated over decades cannot be copied overnight. In addition, even buying and installing those massive lithography machines required to produce chips, which only the Dutch company ASML can make in the world, is a process that takes years in itself. Chip production is not a construction project you can solve by throwing money at it, it is an ecosystem business. In light of all this dark picture, let's look at that feared scenario. If the diplomatic strings break completely and China carries out a military intervention in Taiwan, or if the island is somehow blockaded and chip exports are stopped, what awaits the world? First of all, an unprecedented shock occurs in global markets. The production of cell phones, computers, and televisions in the world slows down completely within weeks. The automotive sector experiences a collapse 10 times larger than the crisis experienced in the pandemic. Due to vehicles that cannot be produced, transportation and logistics costs reach massive dimensions. Besides the civilian dimension of the matter, what is truly frightening is the deadlock that Western countries will experience in their defense industries. When the artificial intelligence chips required for new generation weapon systems and missile networks do not arrive, national security is clearly endangered. Of course, this is not a definite prophecy, but a scenario. However, it is a definite mathematical result that technology prices will multiply and economies will shrink. Let's take the matter one step beyond its economic consequences and look at the geopolitical balance. The chips in Taiwan determine the fate of not only companies but also states. The United States is directly dependent on Taiwan's factories to maintain its own technological and military superiority. China, on the other hand, wants to have this chip production capacity to gain its technological independence and surpass America in the superpower race in the world. Japan and South Korea, on the other hand, are the countries that will be most affected by this massive power war right next to them. So the issue is not just a border issue or an island issue between the two sides. The real issue is who will hold the military and cyber technology leadership of the 21st century. It is exactly this massive dependency that has created an incredible survival strategy for Taiwan. International relations experts call this strategy the Silicon Shield. Think about it, both America and China are incredibly dependent on the chips produced by Taiwan. If China hits Taiwan and the factories are destroyed, China's own economy and technology sector will also collapse in seconds. If America does not protect Taiwan, America's technological hegemony will completely end. In other words, this absolute and monopolistic position of Taiwan in the world's chip production turns into an invisible shield that makes the island unbombable. What ensures the security of the island is not its massive army, but that the whole world is dependent on its products. The Silicon Shield is the strangest and most perfect diplomatic defense line modern history has ever seen. The whole world is incredibly uncomfortable with having surrendered its own throat to Taiwan. Therefore, major powers have started massive strategies to break this massive dependency. The United States, with the famous CHIPS Act, is giving billions of dollars in incentives to companies to establish new chip factories on its own soil. Not only America, industrial giants like Japan and Germany are also allocating budgets of billions of euros for new factories to produce chips within themselves. In short, it is aimed to diversify production geographically and create an alternative in case of a crisis. However, as I mentioned a moment ago, you can build the factory buildings, you can buy the machines. But it will take decades to reflect that perfect efficiency, knowledge, and cost advantage of Taiwan spread over years. It is certainly possible to reduce dependency, but it is almost impossible to change this system quickly. Let's come to that biggest question that will collect everything the video has told under a single umbrella. Well, how did the modern world, those massive states and trillion-dollar companies, become so dependent on a single island? The answer is actually hidden in the basic formula of capitalism and globalization: efficiency, specialization, and cost optimization. Apple specialized in design, ASML specialized in machine production, and TSMC specialized in the cheapest, highest quality, and fastest mass chip production in the world. Everyone did the job they did best, and this accelerated the global economy incredibly. But humanity is learning this very bitter lesson. As efficiency and speed increase, the fragility of the system increases at the same rate. Connecting everything to a single center reduces costs, but when there is a small crack in that center, it causes the entire building to collapse. The most important thing we need to understand while exiting all this geopolitical labyrinth is this. When we look at maps and watch the news, we only see a political tension between two countries. But what actually lies there is the future of humanity. Perhaps the real issue is not only the political future of Taiwan or that region. The real issue is how narrow, how fragile, and how dependent on a technological thread the modern world and all this magnificent technology of ours is built upon. Today, we are looking at a small island on the other side of the world and its fate. But actually, while looking at that island, we are looking at the lethal dependencies and weaknesses of modern man and the system itself. Well, what do you think about this? Do you think the chip crisis is a completely solvable problem, or is it just the silence of a big hurricane that will hit the global economy deeply in the coming years? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. To continue uncovering the scenes behind the invisible wars, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.